You're done here, Ray. Carl's voice cut across the hum of line 3 at 6:22 on a Wednesday evening, 3 days before the biggest school district delivery in Hargrove Foods' 40-year history. 3 days before the FDA inspector was scheduled to walk through our front door. I'm Ray Caldwell, 56 years old, 20 years as Quality Assurance Director at Hargrove Foods, a mid-sized snack and prepared foods manufacturer out of Columbus, Ohio, that puts lunch portions into roughly 200 public schools across the Midwest every single week. That title sounds like a desk job. It isn't. It means I'm the last human being standing between a production line moving at 12,000 units per hour and a headline that reads, "Children hospitalized after allergen found in school lunches." I've been doing this job since before Jake Whitmore, the 25-year-old now sitting at my desk, was old enough to read a nutrition label. Carl Whitmore stood in the doorway of my office in a sport coat that cost more than my monthly truck payment, holding a manila folder like it was a weapon he'd been waiting years to use. He was VP of Operations, brought in 8 months ago by the private equity firm that bought a controlling stake in Hargrove. He had an MBA from Vanderbilt, a vocabulary built entirely from business podcasts, and the kind of confidence that only comes from never having been wrong about anything that actually mattered. "The firm's done a full workflow analysis," he said, not quite looking at me. "Your department represents a significant redundancy cost. You're process heavy, resistant to automation. Jake's going to modernize QA, streamline it, digitize everything, get us lean." Jake Whitmore, his son, 25 years old, Six Sigma yellow belt, which is the kind of certification you earn in a weekend seminar for $300. He'd been calling himself a continuous improvement specialist on LinkedIn for 4 months. Last week he asked me why we kept physical allergen logs when the new software platform already tracked everything automatically. That question alone should have been a fire alarm. "You're pulling QA leadership 3 days before the Tri-County School District delivery," I said, letting the number land. 52,000 lunch portions, 217 schools. "And Kellerman's coming Friday morning." Carl straightened his cuffs. "Jake has reviewed the protocols. He's certified in the platform. We don't need a manual process anymore, Ray. That's literally the point of digital transformation." Kellerman was what we called FDA Senior Inspector Patricia Kellerman, who had never once in 19 years given a food manufacturer the benefit of the doubt on anything she couldn't verify herself with paper documentation. "Carl, that platform has been live for 6 months, and it's still missing batch traceability on anything that runs after the second shift changeover. I've filed 11 incident reports. Your IT vendor hasn't patched it." He held up a hand, the same gesture a man uses when he's already stopped listening. "Jake will handle it. HR has your separation agreement. 2 weeks severance, COBRA information, standard non-disparagement. Donna will walk you out." Donna Purcell had been working the Hargrove front desk for 16 years. We'd eaten birthday cake together in the break room more times than I could count. She knew my daughter's name, knew I took my coffee with 2 sugars and a splash of whatever creamer was left. Now, she stood in the hallway behind Carl with the expression of someone who'd been handed an assignment they'd been dreading all afternoon. "You're making a mistake," I said, not angry, just factual. "The way you say the oven is still on before you leave the house." Kellerman doesn't accept digital-only documentation for allergen traceability. She never has. It's in her inspection methodology, page 47, paragraph 3. I have the printed copy, if you'd like to read it. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Carl said. He'd apparently never noticed that his job was specifically to cross bridges before they collapsed under the weight of 52,000 school lunches. I stood up from my chair, the same chair I'd sat in for 14 of my 20 years here, the back slightly warped where I'd leaned against it through too many late-night production emergencies. I looked at my desk. Physical binders, color-coded by product line, supplier certificates of analysis, going back 7 years, my handwritten batch ledger, cross-referenced daily against the digital system because I'd learned the hard way that software has scheduled maintenance windows and production lines do not. The allergen separation protocol I'd updated personally after our near miss with a mislabeled nut shipment in 2019. None of that information lived anywhere else. Not in any form that Jake Whitmore or Carl Whitmore or the software platform could access without me explaining it first. I didn't explain anything. "I put my coffee mug ceramic," said World's Okayest Dad. "A gift from my daughter Emma, the year she turned 12, into the small box Donna had brought up and carried it down the hallway without looking back." The elevator opened on the ground floor lobby. I expected Donna to hand me off at the door and disappear back to her desk with visible relief. But Carl, in his infinite operational efficiency, had forgotten that my personal vehicle was parked in the employee lot, which required a badge scan to exit, the same badge currently clipped to the lanyard around my neck, which meant I had to walk back through the building to get my truck. We went back through the lobby, past the production floor windows, past the QA lab with its glass wall, and that's where I stopped walking. Because through that glass, I could see Jake Whitmore sitting at my workstation, but he wasn't reviewing my protocols or reading the HACCP documentation I kept in the red binder on the left shelf. He was on his laptop, and he'd pulled up the new platform dashboard, and on the main monitor where I normally had the allergen batch log running, he'd opened the Line 3 production schedule and was doing something that made my stomach drop straight through the polished concrete floor. He was reclassifying tomorrow's school lunch run. The school district delivery had a hard allergen flag, Class 1, meaning it ran on equipment that had been fully sanitized and certified clean of the top 9 allergens, with a physical sign-off at every stage. That process took time. It required a 6-hour hold between the previous run and any Class 1 product touching the line. It required a certificate of analysis from every single ingredient supplier, physically in hand before production started. Jake was reclassifying it to standard run, in the platform, probably because standard run had a shorter setup window, and he'd been told we needed to hit a tighter production schedule. He wasn't doing it maliciously. He genuinely didn't understand what he'd just done. He was moving a number in a drop-down menu the same way you'd change a font size in a PowerPoint presentation. I did the math the way I always do, quickly and without a calculator, a habit built from 20 years of production floors where things can go wrong faster than a meeting can be called to discuss them. The Class 1 certification window was already locked in for tomorrow morning's run. If Jake reclassified tonight, the platform would automatically approve the Line 3 start without triggering the allergen sanitation hold, which meant tomorrow at 4:30 a.m., trucks would leave this facility with 52,000 lunch portions that had not gone through proper allergen clearance, which meant children with peanut or tree nut allergies, and we had the district's allergy registry. I knew there were at least 240 flagged students in this delivery zone would be eating food that had not been verified safe for them. No immediate disaster, no explosion, just a number in a drop-down, and somewhere between the loading dock and a cafeteria in Westerville or Dublin or Pickerington, something that should have been caught wasn't. I pulled out my phone. I scrolled past my ex-wife's contact. We're civil now, mostly for Emma's sake, which is its own kind of full-time job, past my daughter's contact, and I stopped on a name I hadn't called in 4 years. Frank Hargrove, the founder, 68 years old. Built this company from a single commercial kitchen and a root truck he drove himself for 6 years. He didn't have Carl's sport coat or Carl's vocabulary. He had 3 decades of knowing exactly what it meant when a QA director picked up a phone at 6:30 on a Wednesday night. I typed instead of calling because I needed it in writing. Jake just reclassified the Tri-County run to standard in the platform. Class 1 allergen hold won't trigger. Kellerman is Friday. This is a recall waiting to happen. Donna stood next to me with the expression of someone watching a slow-motion car accident from the sidewalk. My phone buzzed 45 seconds later. Don't leave the parking lot. I set my box down on the narrow bench by the lobby door and sat next to it. Donna looked at me. Technically, you're not supposed to be on premises anymore, Ray. Technically, Donna, I'm the only person in this zip code who can stop what's about to happen to the company you've worked at for 16 years. She didn't say anything else. She went back to her desk and found something very important to look at on her monitor. I watched the lobby clock. It was one of those old institutional clocks with the black rim and the red second hand that I'd stared at through 1,000 production crises. At 6:47, the front door opened and Frank Hargrove walked in wearing a flannel shirt and the expression of a man who had not been sitting comfortably at home when he got my message. He walked past Donna, past the product display case with its framed awards and school district commendations, straight to where I was sitting with my cardboard box and my ceramic mug. He looked like he always looked like a man who had spent 30 years solving problems with his hands before he ever learned to solve them with money. Tell me what happened, he said. Your son-in-law's son just reclassified the Tri-County allergen run in the platform. The system won't flag it. Trucks are scheduled at 4:30 a.m. Kellerman is here at 7. Frank rubbed the back of his neck with one hand. He was quiet for a moment in the way that men are quiet when they're doing real calculations, not performative ones. Carl told me you were slowing production down. Too many manual checks, redundant systems. I've filed 11 platform incident reports in 6 months. The batch traceability gap on second shift changeover is documented, If Kellerman pulls tonight's production log against the allergen registry, and she won't find the Class 1 sign-off chain because Jake just told the system it doesn't need one. Frank looked at the floor. What does the exposure look like? Best case, she flags us for a documentation violation, and we get a warning letter. Worst case, she initiates a Class 2 recall on the full Tri-County delivery. That's 52,000 units. The district contract is worth $4.3 million annually. Recall costs, legal exposure, remediation. You're looking at a number that starts with 8 and has 6 figures after it before you get to the brand damage. He looked up at me. Can you fix it? That depends on what we're talking about fixing. He waited. The platform reclassification I can reverse in about 4 minutes. The allergen sanitation hold is already at hour 3 if we restart it now. Line 3 can still make the 4 to 30 window, barely. Kellerman I can handle if I have my documentation, which is still in the QA lab because nobody thought to move it yet. Then fix it. Frank, I kept my voice even. This was the moment, and I'd been doing this long enough to know that moments like this don't wait for you to gather yourself. I'm not going to walk back in there and fix a crisis that was created by putting an unqualified person in my chair, and then walk back out again like that's a reasonable arrangement. I've spent 20 years building the systems that are keeping your company out of the news tonight. I need to know that's understood before I touch a single thing. He looked at me for a long moment. Frank Hargrove had built something real. And men who build real things understand when they're looking at something else that's real, even when it's inconvenient. What do you need? I need Carl and Jake out of QA. Tonight, I need it done in front of the team, not in a conference room with an NDA and a handshake. And I need it acknowledged officially, on the record, that the platform does not replace physical allergen documentation, and it never will until it's certified to do so. Carl's been with the firm for 3 years. They'll push back. Then you can explain to the firm why a manual reclassification in a software platform nobody certified triggered a recall that made the Columbus Dispatch's front page. I picked up my box and held it against my hip. Your call, Frank. The lobby was very quiet. The production floor hum came through the walls, distant and steady, a sound I'd lived inside for 2 decades. Donna was extremely focused on whatever was on her monitor. The clock's red second hand kept moving. All right, Frank said, quietly, like a man who'd just made a decision that had been a long time coming. I need to hear it clearly. He looked at me directly. Carl's done, Jake's done, you fix the line, we figure out the rest tomorrow. I set my box back down on the bench. I'm gonna need Miguel. Miguel Santos was 28, third-year QA tech, the kind of employee who wrote everything down and asked questions that revealed he'd already thought about the problem from 3 different angles before opening his mouth. He was the only person on my team who I'd actually trained to use both the platform and the physical documentation system in parallel, specifically because I'd told him 18 months ago that redundancy wasn't inefficiency, it was the whole point. I found him in the lab, standing next to the Line 3 allergen log with the expression of someone who had just watched a car drive off a bridge and wasn't sure if they were allowed to say anything about it. You saw the reclassification, I said. 20 minutes ago. I didn't know if I was supposed to. You were. You always are. That's why we document things. I moved past Jake's open laptop. He'd gone somewhere, probably the break room, probably unaware that anything unusual was happening, and sat down at the main terminal. Pull the allergen hold log. Tell me where we are on the sanitation cycle. Hour 3, 42 minutes, Miguel said, pulling it up on the secondary monitor. If we reset the reclassification and restart the hold verification, we need 2 hours and 18 minutes minimum to clear. That puts us at 9:17 p.m. Line 3 can be live by 9:30, and we still make the 4 to 30 truck window. That's right. I looked at him. You already ran those numbers. I ran them at hour 1, he said. I was hoping someone would come back. I reversed the reclassification in the platform in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Then I did something that the platform couldn't do and never would be able to do, because it required 20 years of institutional memory and a set of physical keys that had been on my belt for so long they'd worn a groove in the leather. In the back of the QA lab, behind the secondary refrigeration unit, on the bottom shelf where it had lived for 6 years, was a green 3-ring binder. No barcode, no digital record of its existence. The cover was water-stained from a burst pipe incident in 2021 and held together with 2 rubber bands because the original rings had warped. The label, in black permanent marker in my own handwriting, read, Allergen Verification Shadow Log Legacy Protocols. Do not discard. 6 years of parallel batch documentation. Every allergen clearance, every supplier certificate of analysis, every sanitation sign-off, physically recorded and cross-referenced by hand every single shift I'd worked. Since the first platform crash in 2019 taught me that no software company's uptime guarantee was worth betting a school district contract on. Jake Whitmore had spent 6 months trying to build a digital-first QA department. He hadn't known this binder existed because no one had told him, and no one had told him because no one had thought to ask me what I kept on the bottom shelf of the secondary refrigeration unit. This was the thing Carl Whitmore had called redundant. This was the legacy drag. I set it on the main table under the lab lights. The pages fell open to this week's documentation because I'd been in here adding to it 3 hours ago, before Carl called me into his office. "What is that?" Miguel asked. "That," I said, "is the reason Patricia Kellerman is going to leave here Friday morning without a single finding." Frank came in 10 minutes later with Carl behind him. Carl's sport coat looked slightly less certain than it had an hour ago. He stopped when he saw me at the terminal, then stopped again when he saw the binder. "Why is he back on the premises?" Carl said. "I authorized." "You authorized a disaster," Frank said. His voice was quiet in the way that a man's voice gets quiet when he has stopped performing authority and started using it. "Jake reclassified the Tri-County run. The platform approved. The platform approved it because Jake told it to. Ray, what would have happened at 4:30 tomorrow morning if you hadn't come back? I didn't look up from the terminal. 52,000 units leaving this dock with no verified allergen clearance documentation. Kellerman would have found the gap between the platform log and the physical sign-off requirement within 40 minutes of walking in Friday. We'd have been in recall proceedings by noon. The lab was very quiet. The ventilation system hummed. Miguel was at his station, eyes on his screen, with the disciplined stillness of someone who understands that the adults in the room are having a conversation that matters. Carl's jaw moved. He was running through options the way MBA-trained people do, looking for the framing, the angle, the language that makes this someone else's problem. The platform was certified by the vendor. The vendor certified that the software functions as designed, I said. It was never certified as a replacement for physical allergen documentation under 21 CFR Part 117. That's a distinction that exists in writing, in Kellerman's inspection methodology, which I have printed and filed in the red binder on shelf 2. You could have read it any time in the last 6 months. Carl looked at Frank. Frank looked at Carl with the expression of a man who has been building something real for 30 years and has run out of patience for people who confuse the map with the territory. "You're relieved, Carl. Tonight, Jake too." Frank's voice didn't waver. "I'll have legal draw up the separation terms. You can coordinate with HR in the morning." Carl's composure cracked, just at the edges. "I've restructured operations for 11 portfolio companies. This is a documentation process issue, not a leadership. You put your son in a QA director role 3 days before an FDA inspection." Frank turned toward the door. "Get your things." Carl stood very still for a moment, the kind of stillness that precedes a decision. Then he left, and the sound of his footsteps on the production floor faded, and the hum of the ventilation system filled the space where his certainty had been. Jake appeared in the doorway about 4 minutes later. He'd been crying, or close to it, the particular look of someone who genuinely had no idea that what they were doing had consequences and is now, for the first time, confronting that fact. He was 25. He hadn't set out to hurt anyone. He had simply been placed behind controls he didn't understand and given permission to use them. "I didn't know about the allergen hold requirement," he said. He was talking to the floor. "The platform said standard run was approved." "I know you didn't," I said. I kept my voice level. This wasn't a moment to perform anything. That's why QA directors exist. The platform doesn't know what it doesn't know. That's not a flaw in the software. It's a fundamental limit of any automated system. The human oversight is the feature, not the inefficiency. He nodded once, not like he fully understood, but like he was filing it away somewhere it might do some good later. "Go home," I told him. "Talk to your dad in the morning." He left. Miguel exhaled slowly at his station. "Okay," I said, cracking my knuckles without ceremony over the keyboard. "Let's go to work." The next 4 hours were the kind of work that doesn't look impressive to anyone who isn't watching closely enough. Miguel ran the allergen sanitation verification on line 3, step by step, physical sign-off at each stage. The way I'd trained him, the way I'd insisted we train everyone, even when Carl called it excessive procedural overhead in the operations review last March. I updated the shadow binder in parallel with the platform entries, cross-referencing every supplier COA, confirming the nut-free certification on the modified cornstarch we'd switched suppliers for in September, checking the sign-off chain on the dairy-free formulation that served the district's lactose-intolerant population. At 9:17 p.m., Line 3 cleared allergen verification. At 9:31, production started. At 11:48, Miguel ran the final batch check and came to find me where I was finishing the Kellerman documentation package, the physical binder she would want to see, organized in the exact format I knew she preferred because I'd been through 11 of her inspections over 19 years. "Line's clean," he said. "Everything's tracking. We're on pace for 4:30. Good." I set down my pen. "You did well tonight." He leaned against the door frame. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "That shadow binder. 6 years of parallel documentation. The platform team didn't know about it. Management didn't know about it." He paused. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" I thought about that for a moment. It was a fair question, and it deserved a fair answer. I told my supervisor in 2019, when I built the first version of it after the platform's first major outage. He told me it was unnecessary and that I should trust the vendor's redundancy systems. I told Carl about it in his third week, when I presented the incident report backlog. He called it a legacy mentality holdover. I looked at the binder on the table. After that, I stopped telling people about it and started just doing it. I figured if the day ever came that it mattered, it would be self-evident. Miguel was quiet for a moment. "That's a pretty lonely way to work." "It is," I agreed. "That's also why I started training you to do it too, so it wouldn't only live in my head." He thought about that. Then he nodded once. The way people nod when they understand something that goes beyond the conversation they're having. He went back to the production floor, and I went back to the documentation, and the clock's red second hand kept moving, and somewhere on line 3, the production run that was going to feed 217 schools in the morning was running clean. Frank Hargrove was waiting in the break room at midnight, sitting at the same folding table where we'd eaten birthday cake together 16 times. He had 2 cups of coffee, the company coffee, burnt and overbrewed, exactly what it always was. He pushed one toward me when I sat down. "Line's good," I said. "Trucks will leave on time. Documentation's ready for Kellerman." He wrapped his hands around his cup. "I owe you an apology. You owe me a conversation." He nodded. The firm pushed hard for the restructure. Carl came with strong recommendations. I let it happen because I was tired of fighting everything. He paused. "I should have read the incident reports." "Yes," I said. I didn't soften it. 20 years of friendship earned the right to honesty without softening. "What do you need to make this right?" he asked. I thought about Carl's sport coat and Carl's vocabulary and Carl's 6 months of dismantling what I'd spent 20 years building. And then I thought about what I actually wanted, which was not what a less honest version of myself might have said. I need the QA director role back, with the authority to reject platform changes that affect allergen documentation without my sign-off. I need Miguel promoted to senior QA tech with a real compensation adjustment, not a title change. And I need the platform vendor in a room with me and their lead engineer before anyone else touches the system configuration. Frank was quiet for a moment. "That's it?" "That's it." I drank the bad coffee. "I don't need a better office or a fancier title. I need the authority to do the job I've been doing. That's all I ever needed." The FDA inspection on Friday morning lasted 4 hours and 22 minutes. Patricia Kellerman was exactly who she always was, methodical, unhurried, entirely unimpressed by digital dashboards or platform certifications or anything that didn't have a physical paper trail she could hold in her hands and verify herself. When she got to allergen documentation for the Tri-County delivery, I handed her the shadow binder. She went through it page by page. She cross-referenced 4 supplier COAs against the batch lot numbers. She checked the sanitation hold timestamps against the line 3 production log. She reviewed the allergen registry cross-check for the district's flagged students. Then she looked up at me over her reading glasses with an expression that Kellerman reserved for things she couldn't find fault with, which was an expression I'd seen exactly twice in 19 years. "This is the most complete allergen trace documentation I've seen from a facility this size," she said. "Your digital system has gaps in the second shift changeover data. I'm aware. It's on the remediation list. The physical documentation runs parallel. It shows." She closed the binder and handed it back. No findings. 2 weeks later, Frank called a company meeting, full production staff, QA team, all department heads, the whole thing. He stood at the front of the room and said clearly, with no conference room or NDA to soften it, that the restructure had been a mistake, that the platform had been over-relied upon, and that the standards that had kept Hargrove Foods out of a recall for 20 years had been built by people who understood that redundancy is not inefficiency. It is the thing that stands between a production floor and a front-page story. He promoted Miguel in the same meeting. The room applauded. Miguel looked like he was trying not to cry, which I understood completely. I went back to my office, my actual office, with the warped chair and the color-coded binders and the shelf where the shadow binder had lived for 6 years, and I sat down and looked at the production floor through the lab window. Line 3 was running clean. The allergen hold indicators were green. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be, documented in duplicate, verified by a human hand, and a digital system working the way they were designed to work, not instead of each other, but alongside each other, each one catching what the other might miss. My phone buzzed. Emma, my daughter, asking if I was still coming to her soccer game Saturday. I replied, wouldn't miss it. I opened the shadow binder to the current week's log and picked up my pen. Carl Whitmore had called this redundant overhead. He'd called it resistance to innovation. He'd called it legacy drag and legacy mentality, and, in one particularly memorable operations review, an impediment to the company's digital-first vision. It had also, on a Wednesday evening in Columbus, Ohio, kept 52,000 kids' lunches safe, and kept a 40-year-old company out of a recall that would have cost more than Carl Whitmore had made in his entire career. I wrote the date at the top of the page, in my usual handwriting, the same slightly uneven block letters I'd been writing in these binders for 6 years, and I started the entry. Some things are worth doing slowly. Some things are worth doing twice. And some people have to learn the hard way that the systems they called outdated were the only thing standing between them and the kind of mistake that doesn't get a second chance. Jake eventually got a job at
I'm freezing. I'm bleeding. Slowly fading away. But don't worry. I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath, even while my soul is fading. I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath, even while my soul is fading. I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry. I'll pretend till my last breath, Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay.
Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to.
There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide, and 1,000 quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Maybe one day I'll be stronger, maybe I'll learn how to speak, but for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you.